So, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the latest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and is directed by Ryan Coogler, who also directed the first film. So, now that it's finally arrived, let's talk about it.
Right now is our time.
So, I, like many, was really looking forward to this movie, but I also recognize that it's a hard movie to talk about because of the untimely and tragic death of Chadwick Boseman. I do not envy the position that director Ryan Coogler was in, because now not only does he have to make a sequel to a movie that caught a lot of people off guard by how successful it was, and this movie has to also respectfully honor Chadwick Boseman. And I think Coogler is a fantastic filmmaker, but I was very apprehensive about this. Not because of Coogler, of course. He has already proven that he can make a film that is a genuine, touching tribute that grapples with the death of a real person. Someone who, in this movie's case, was a close friend and collaborator. But this is also a franchise movie made by a billion-dollar corporation. So, in short, I was worried that if Coogler didn't have enough creative control over this, it could easily come across feeling very corporate, which isn't good for any movie, but can feel disrespectful for a film like this that deals with this subject matter. And overall, I think this movie succeeds. I do feel there are parts of this that do feel studio mandated, and I'll get into that. But how this movie handles Boseman's death, I think it was very respectful and emotionally powerful. As you've probably already seen from the trailers, this film has the characters grapple with the death of King T'Challa, which I think was a very wise decision. And this theme of grief and the feeling of anger and frustration that comes with it permeates throughout the film. What this movie does with Shuri, played by Letitia Wright, especially when you compare to the first movie, I think is incredibly effective. In the first movie, she's a fun supporting character, but here, when you see her take center stage in this, she goes through such emotions, and I think Letitia Wright gives an amazing performance. But the journey Shuri goes on to become the next Black Panther, I think is some of the best character work we have gotten from Marvel. I liked Shuri before, but now she's one of my favorite characters in the MCU, both because of the writing and the performance. Angela Bassett as Ramonda as well gives a very powerful performance, and you see in her this sense of wanting to protect what she has at all costs. One of my favorite scenes in this is between Ramonda and Okoye, that if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They did a great job solidifying Ramonda and also Okoye as characters, and showing exactly what they were feeling at that point in the movie. Danae Guerrera as Okoye as well, I think gets a lot more to do here compared to any of the other Marvel movies she's been in. This is really the first time I've been emotionally invested in Okoye. Tenoch Huerta as Namor or Namor. He calls himself Namor, but for the rest of the movie, everyone else just calls him Namor for some reason. Anyway, he's great. A lot of people are comparing him to Killmonger and saying he's not as good, and maybe his motivation isn't as sound, but I found him more menacing. His introduction scene was also my favorite scene in the movie. I love how this movie just takes the myth of sirens from old folklore and modernizes it in a way. I found that to be just really cool. Also, that fight scene on the bridge, holy shit, that just ruled. I just found the filmmaking and presentation in general to be a step up from the first movie. Coogler's a great director, and Black Panther 1 was by no means poorly made, but I did get the feeling while watching it that it was made on a deadline, and maybe Marvel had more work going into Infinity War. But this looked great. They shot with anamorphic lenses, love seeing that, it looked really beautiful. There's some just beautiful use of lighting, the colors actually contrast really well. It's by far the best looking Marvel movie since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, even better than that in some regards. I appreciated how thematically mature this was. It's definitely the most mature Marvel movie. It's still made for all demographics, like every Marvel movie is, but there's some pretty heavy subject matter that this didn't shy away from, and it's handled really well. And the third act, although it is similar to other Marvel third acts, I thought it was legitimately great. The stakes feel really high in a way that other Marvel movies lack. Mild spoiler alert, but you kind of saw it in the trailers. When you have Shuri fighting Namor, it felt as though one of them was seriously going to die. I just thought it was a really intense fight and really well done. As far as the negatives go, I thought some of the editing was a bit strange. Felt like some scenes ended very abruptly, and that was quite weird. Namor's first scene in Wakanda felt very out of nowhere. He sort of enters a scene that has nothing to do with him. I think it might just be because of the editing, but I don't know. The action overall was pretty great, but I felt that there was too much slow motion, and the use of it felt way too reminiscent of how Zack Snyder uses slow motion. And also, with this being a Marvel movie, it suffers from the two big Marvel problems, those being forced humor and distracting setups. Maybe the humor irked me more than it would have because I heard going in that this was very light on humor, but that wasn't really the case. But the setups, oh boy. I was worried going in that Riri Williams would feel forced in, but she definitely has a place in the story. Unfortunately, though, she just doesn't really do anything in the third act, and her having an Iron Man suit has no impact on the plot whatsoever. I think Marvel just sorted the script, had a young female scientist character, and just rewrote it a little to make it Riri Williams so it could set up her show. That said, it didn't take me out of the movie or anything. For most of it, you don't feel like she's forced in the movie at all. What did take me out of the movie, though, was the Everett Ross subplot. It's just a setup for something that, frankly, I don't even have that much interest in. It's kind of shocking how they didn't cut a decent chunk of it out, considering how these movies go through multiple test screenings, and I'm sure this subplot was pointed as something that should be cut, but nope. Must be setting up something really important, I guess. I don't know. And I think partly because of that subplot, I just noticed that Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Duke could have been getting more screen time, but instead it's devoted to Everett Ross. The scenes weren't even bad in any way, but it just had no bearing on the story at all and just felt like it was wasting time. Although this has more problems than the first Black Panther movie, I'm not sure I would call it a worse movie, because Black Panther is pretty great, but once you get to the third act, it starts getting kind of bad. This improves on a lot of the aspects I didn't like about the first movie, it just has its own set of problems. Overall, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is definitely one of the better projects from Marvel Phase 4. Like the first Black Panther, it's a little rough around the edges, but the core of the film is pretty excellent. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Anyway, that's what I thought about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter at CinemaGeekYT, leave a like, and subscribe for more videos like this one.